Hello there, welcome back. We're going to talk about Miami Vice movie that Michael Mann made in the mid-2000s. A film, this is, in my opinion, his last really strong film. He's made Public Enemies after that with John Dillinger, and he's made Black Hat. Two films which I like, but I would not seriously class them as top-level Michael Mann. They do feel like a films made by a director who's past his peak, but still doing enjoyable work. But Miami Vice is still the film, man. Even though it was hated on release, but it's one of those films that quickly got a cult following because there's so many some people like me who really love it, and I think that's grown over time as people went beyond what their initial expectations of the film was. Like that it was going to be just a high-tech version of Miami Vice, the TV show. And instead, it became a movie about Miami Vice, like what the TV show actually was, not what you remember it being. What you remember it being was the flash cars and the kind of good cameos and the extreme, some violence, but kind of fun. Miami Vice was not that. Miami Vice, the first few seasons Michael Mann was involved, was a fairly dark, melancholy show where people get heartbroken a lot. There was lots of deaths. I mean, 8 episodes in, one of the main characters was killed off, one of the police captains, and it was just like, part of the actor didn't work out very well for that part, so they replaced him with Edward James Olmos. But I didn't know that at the time. I watched Miami Vice religiously for the first couple of years. Like the first 3 years, but Michael Mann period basically. And I didn't know it was coming. It was quite a shock to see one of the lead characters was brutally murdered. And that was the thing about the show is people died horribly in that show. People really died because it was like a show where it was about police work. And bad things happened, and there was a darker element to it. Even though it was pulpy, there was a dark element. Even though they were doing the Don Johnson thing of the beautiful clothes and stuff, because there were cops who were going undercover a lot and trying to bust drug dealers. And it was very influenced by Scarface. Everyone thought that image was the show, and it wasn't the show. It was something else. So when Michael Mann came back to do the show as a film, which he resisted for years because he wasn't interested when he finished the show. He left the show after season 3 and he'd done what he wanted to do with the stories. He did his film career. And then when it came back up later, I think he saw a different way to do that story. And because the Miami drug scene had changed so much since then, it got so much more dark and violent. It's a very dark environment when he made Miami Vice. But it become much more a multinational thing since then. It was less to do with something like Pablo Escobar and more to do with conglomerates of different levels of corruption within agencies and within police and within different countries around the world, and it was much more complicated, and there were multi-cooperation elements to it as well, with people hiding behind banks and things, so it's much more complicated. So he wanted to do a different type of film that was darker but also kept to what Miami Vice was. And no one understood that. And when they saw the film, it was like, why is this not like flashy cars and blah blah blah? And it was like, because it's a film noir. And this is a new version of film noir. This is what a film noir would look like now. And Miami Vice was what film noir would look like in the 80s. And then in the 40s, what you got in film noir was what it looked like then. It was an advancement of the film noir aesthetic for the 2000s. And people just rejected it completely. That's a real shame because the film is just wonderful. But it's not trying to ingratiate you. It assumes you know who Crockett and Tubbs are, which is 2 lead characters. Colin Farrell's Sonny Crockett, Jamie Foxx's Ricardo Tubbs. They're playing characters who you know from the TV shows, but they are different now. Like, Crockett was always a kind of romantic fatalist and a bit of a depressive. Now Tubbs is also a bit more depressive. He used to be the much more upbeat one, even though he was still serious. Now he's a bit more depressive and darker, and they're just dealing with darker issues like prostitution and things, and they're more worried down. This idea is of reinventing them now as characters in this world where it is a bit more corrupt, a bit more sleazy. It's darker. No one's wearing bright colours anymore. They're all wearing dark colours. The criminals have automatic weapons, like, go fast boats that go really, really fast. There's boat races which they went to try and infiltrate different prostitution rings. That's how the film starts. You're watching them in an average bust. Then they get pulled out of that into the actual plot of the film. But you get the idea this is a much tougher thing. Crockett's fairly depressed. He just isn't connected with anybody. He just looks down. Now there's two versions of the film. There's the theatrical cut, which is about 2 hours, and 2 hours 20 cut is the director's cut. Both cuts are good. I like the director's cut more because there's more detail. But the theatrical cut does have an advantage in the sense of the director's cut, you get more detail into the characters and the world and what's driving them. The theatrical is much more paranoid, more pure noir. We get a bit less of that, and it's much more of like a Melville type of film where the more figures, the more like figures in the landscape trying to survive, and the director's cut, they're more character based. That's the kind of difference. I like the more character based version, but then again, sometimes I'd watch the theatrical as well. It just depends what I feel like. I've got both in Blu-ray. I can watch whatever one I want. But for the recent viewing, I watched the director's cut. And I watched it on a projector. I saw this in the cinema when it was first released. So I've seen both versions now projected. So, the film is an updated film noir. And basically the idea is they have to go in undercover and cut into the supply chain of a major drug supplier to find out who is the person who is the mole in the government agencies. They have to do all these big things now just to try and figure out who a mole is, because this mole is so integral to various operations. He can tell the drug dealers exactly who's undercover, and it can destroy all of their undercover work and basically give the drug dealers full reign. So they have to find out, they can't find out who it is, they find out what office it's in. And that's the whole operation, how it starts out. They're trying to find out who the person is who's the leak. And you never find exactly who it is. Because that's not the point, that's just the setup. Someone else in our job's going to do that. In another movie, they'd find out who it was because they're the heroes. This one, it takes up real life. It's like, they do one function, they find that information out, pass it along to someone else who'll find and do the next bit. So you have different departments getting this investigation going, just be one. But that's a setup to get them undercover, to go into basically go into Colombia and Nicaragua, Argentina and Brazilian, they've all joined one area, and those borders, that's where they're going, because that's where the drug operation is based, because they can go from country to country, and whatever country they're at, they can move from one place to the other. There's a lot of border areas where they function. There's a lot of areas in there's different favelas where they can have total control. And the feeling you get, especially in the director's cut, is these are countries that have been economically stripped by the drug dealers, but they've also been economically ignored by the first world. So what else are they going to do but follow this life? Like, these are the people who are going to pay them, so their areas where they live become the domain of the drug dealers. Where the film goes after that is looking at how the operation works. How the operation works actually is a multinational company. They push the drugs through their lead guy who does the smuggling, who's played by John Ortiz, who's a very crazy, very manipulative person who's been on top for a while and he wants to stay on top, and he does not care how many people he kills, even on his own side, to keep the mystery up and keep himself safe but also make the money. And he's making sure he stays in with the lead guy of the cartel so that he's always being protected and getting paid. Now, the lead guy of the cartel is also in love with Gong Li's character, and this is the first American film. But she's playing a character who's born in Havana, who English language is not really her first language. She deals with Spaniards and Spanish-speaking countries in China and all these other things, so she speaks different languages, but English is one of them. And you start to get a sense of they're operating under different companies and different fronts all over the world, investing money from here to there. Like, drug dealing is just part of what they're doing. But it's a main part of what they're doing, it's financing what they're doing. And she's one of them, and she's the person who's making sure the loads get onto the boats, onto the planes, and get taken into the country. And the whole idea really is that it's like, this is something that's just a business, really. It's a functioning business. It's illegal, so they have to try and stop them, but they're treating it like a business. And into this, so what the drug dealers do is this to them as part of business, paying off informants, making sure there's informants on top level so the people can't get to them, the cops can't get to them. That's just business. It's not personal. And you get that sense throughout the film is that the distance of what we'd normally see in a film, like the passion of a cop in normally see in a film, versus just the reality. The reality is it's indifferent. People are people. They don't care about what your problem is. You know, when the villains come against Crockett and Tubbs as the film goes on, it's nothing personal, except when it's the John Ortiz character. Usually it's just a business thing. They don't know who this person is generally. It's just like, I'm going to make more money if I kill this person for someone else. Fine. There's that coldness that runs through the film, the coldness of the world, that everyone's paranoid. Everyone knows they can get killed at any moment because they're in a drug dealing business, or if they're middlemen for people, and if someone turns out to be a cop, they're going to get it. It's a very dangerous world. And however Crockett Tubbs have to deal with, you always see them having to deal really roughly with them because they don't want them to snitch on them. And when they go and see Ortiz to start with, they have to be very brutal with him so he doesn't suspect they're cops. And he always suspects the Colin Farrell character something's up with him. So there's always something between these two straight away that's just not good. Just energy between two different people who do not like each other. And it's so obvious they hate each other. And then when Colin Farrell's character starts to see the Gong Li character, who is so connected up the chain and so powerful, the Ortiz character both has fear that, you know, this person's really important and she's favouring this guy who he hates, and also jealousy because he wants to do Gong Li character as well. So he's operating under a lot of different motivations, and he's the snake in thing. He's the one that actually causes most of the problems. He's probably the one who has the snitch in the thing in the American government. He's the one whose actions cause the cops to get interested in them in the first place. And he's almost like the kind of crazy person in the middle who's acting normally, but his insanity is the thing that's actually spreading through the whole operation and creating paranoia within a really paranoid business. And it just leads to more and more damage. Now, Miami Vice is wonderful. It's a wonderful film, but it does distance you from what you expect. The same way in film noir is always distance you, because you're meant to like the characters. In film noir, you're meant to like them to a degree. There is a paranoia. The film noir characters are self-destructive. In this one, even though he's a cop, the Colin Farrell character is self-destructive. He does fall for Gong Li's character. He does place his entire operation at risk by spitting in the face of the drug cartels once he's done one delivery. And when we stand up suspicion, he is acting very self-destructively. And he is in love with this woman who's also in a dangerous world by her own choice. And it becomes this thing of these two people on opposite sides of the law. They don't realize, she doesn't realize he's an undercover cop. But this sense of got a connection, and how do you survive in a world that's this corrupt? Do you become a cop or do you become a criminal? And how do you deal with that life? And how do you deal with the consequences of that life, and how luck can change at any moment, especially in a violent world? And that becomes the idea of the film. As things come out of control, it's what do you actually care about, and what will you protect? And the film does spin out as the second half goes on, where it becomes much more about the paranoia of the Ortiz character and how his actions cause hell for everybody, how he causes people to be killed left, right and centre, and how they're going to deal with him. Because what started out as a very basic operation, very kind of it was basically just trying to get this, find out who the snitch is. And if they find out they're part of the deal, and then once that bit's over, that's when Ortiz's characters have been pushed enough that he starts to go crazy. And they have to deal with this like link in the cartel as it starts to go out of control. And it's quite interesting, the lead of the cartel lets Ortiz go wild, but he backs away to a degree when he realises it's going south. So he just disappears and lets him deal with the consequences. Lets him be the front man for the mess, and he just backs away and lets him take all the heat. And it shows you how cold the world is if you step out beyond what you should be doing. Because, well, Ortiz thinks he's messing with Gong Li's character. He's getting messed with as well, and he doesn't realise it because he's so passionate. And he's like the one passionate person reacting to other passionate people, and it just becomes this mess. And it's this messy situation in a world that's really cold and really distant. And you also get in director's cut more of the idea that Jamie Foxx's character is he's had a film with one of the detectives, Nomi Harris's character. That's in the theatrical cut, but it's much more in the director's cut because it's much more impactful and you get more scenes with them, so that when things happen in the second half, it has more impact. Because in the theatrical, that's a bit more distance. And that's why the director's cut more. There's more emotion once things go wrong because there's more stakes at that point. And it is a really wonderful noir film about the kind of passions of people who have trained themselves to be distant and trained themselves to be professional, and suddenly the cracks that appear and the dangers that appear once they're in a world that punishes their passions and punishes their little imperfections. And it just comes as a wonderful film. It is a very dark film. It does deal with compromises and consequences you might not like. And there's no big... There is a shootout at the end, but it's not a really big, epic thing you'd expect. Apparently it was changed because of problems we're having in production. The film went over budget, there were issues. So apparently it should have taken place in South America, but ended up taking place in America. So it is an ending that does feel like it was changed from something else. But it still works really well because Michael Mann focuses on the drama rather than the lots of guns going off. He's much more about the people involved and what they're about. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful film. I don't want to go any more about it. I'm sure I'll cover it over time in other videos as well. Other stuff. This is just me trying to talk about it generally to start with. The idea of this is a terrific noir film. You should really see it. It looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. And it's one of the best films shot in digital because it takes what's there in digital and actually uses that rather than trying to make it look like film. Michael Mann doesn't do that when he shoots digital, he shoots digital. He uses the advantage of digital for his own good. And he uses that to tell the story in a slightly different way, taking advantage of what digital does and what it can't do to tell the story slightly differently. So his films in digital age better now because we're kind of more used to digital, just he was ahead of the curve. So I think this is Michael Mann's last really great film, but it's a really good film to end your peak on. So, highly recommend it. Go see Miami Vice. It's wonderful.